Looking at our image box today, we are in image 1. Everybody point to image 1 box. Point to it. Read the directions for image 1. Write one word that summarizes the topic of the paragraph. So your focus as I go through is you're thinking of one word that kind of sums it up. Okay? So how many words will you have written in that box? 1. Tyrant, Etruscan king. Before the establishment of the Roman Republic, areas in present-day Italy and surrounding lands were divided up into lots of little kingdoms with many different rulers. Some kings were richer and more powerful than others. The kings and their people fought each other all the time, and over the years they developed long-standing rivalries that often resulted in warfare. The city of Rome was controlled by a long line of Etruscan kings who had ruled for several generations. Etruscan kings worried above all else about losing power, especially losing control over their city. They figured the best way to hang on apologize. There you go. They figured the best way to hang on to the power was to be as harsh as possible with their subjects, the people for whom they ruled. That's the picture we should be on. I apologize. I forgot to change the picture when we moved over. So if you had to pick one word that kind of summarized this, what are words that you might put in that first box? Turn and brainstorm with your neighbor first. One word. Now use your own brain. Don't just steal someone else's word. Three, two, one. What's a word, or I want to hear some of your words. Don't repeat someone else's, that you might put in that box that kind of just summarizes what we read in that piece. Claire. War? Okay, there's a lot of war going on, wasn't there? Cooper. Control. Were they trying to control others? Definitely. That's a good one. Haley. Power. That's a good one too. Yeah, I like how you made that connection to Cooper's, but you knew it was going to be different. Power. So having power. Ray. King. So we learned about those Etruscan kings. That's a great one. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Cruel. Were they being kind of cruel? Okay. Apollo. Harsh. That's a great one. I heard that one a few times as we went around. Everybody go ahead and write down your word. Write down your word. In the second, as I read the second paragraph that we go through today, this next passage, it goes with our next picture. You are going to write down key words that you hear. So as I read, you should be writing. Now, I know one thing that often trips third graders up is they don't know how to spell some of the words they hear or some of the words they feel are important. What can you do?
Sound it out.
Sound it out. Try your best. These are those note pieces. It doesn't have to be perfect. One of the things you can do is do little bullet points, put a few keywords in, but think of some really key words that pop up as I read this. Around 500 BCE, the people in Rome decided that they had had enough. They overthrew their Etruscan king and created a new form of government. So there's probably been a few keywords. Would you agree? Write them down. Any keywords that come up with, write them down. They overthrew their Etruscan king and created a new form of government. Rome's new form of government was now called a republic. Sound it out. You're going to have to try your best. In some very important ways, this new government was based on a form of government that the ancient Greeks practiced at the time, called democracy. Instead of having a king make all the laws and tell everyone else what to do, the Romans decided that the citizens, the people, should be able to elect those who would work together to make decisions, to form laws, to guide how their society was ruled. In this new form of government, the people had more of a voice in how their society would be ruled as a republic. There's probably quite a few important words that we came across. Write them down. We'll do a pause so you can write them down. Here is how the new form of government worked. Instead of a king, there was a group of people called the Senate. Members of the Senate were called senators. There were 300 senators in the Roman Senate, all of whom were men. Senators held their position for as long as they lived. The people elected 2 consuls, 2 people whose job it was to make final decisions on whether a new law should be passed or whether, for instance, to go to war. They had the power to command the army and were advised by the Senate. The consuls were powerful people in the Roman Republic, but they did not have the power to write new laws on their own. Senators debated over what kind of laws were needed in Rome. When senators came to an agreement, they would advise the consuls on their decisions. If one consul made a decision that the other consul did not approve of, they would say veto, which means I forbid. Even though the consuls had attributes of being very powerful and important, the 2 consuls had to work together to create a process of checks and balances, or a way to balance out each other's decisions. These ideas of vetoes and checks and balances are 2 practices from ancient Rome that are part of the Roman government and other governments around the world. Make sure you have that box filled out and drawing a quick sketch of what that government would look like. Nope, erase that. Draw what it would look like. It's not going to look like a maze. Sticking with this page, this image that we just looked at, what are some of those, what did you guys kind of notice happening as we were going through the read aloud? What are some things that you're noticing as we go through it? Cooper.
That we're talking about, their army and the Senate.
The army, the Senate. Good. What else do we notice popping up? Haley.
We noticed that they were in charge.
Where's your books? You don't need them. What are we learning?
That they're in charge of the governor, and they're in charge of everything.
They're talking about who's in charge of things, right? So it used to be a king, and now they're talking about their new form of government. What do they call that new form of government? It starts with an R. They called it a
Republic.
And it very closely mirrored what Greece did and the Greek community did. And what did the Greeks call it? They called it a started with a D. Democracy.
Oh,
So we are reading about how the Greeks used a democracy system, a democratic system, and the Romans used a republic system. And instead of having a king rule, they had consuls rule. And underneath the consuls there was the Senate, and the Senate made decisions and then it got brought to the consuls. So it was a big working system, right? Does that sound more familiar to things we're used to?
Yeah.
We were just talking about this is fitting for what's going on in our world right now. Look, yep, Democrat, Republicans, elections, being able to have people make decisions for the people that are under them. So huge pieces to it, right? Everybody point to box 4. This is describe, what was our word again? Patricians. Describe patricians, okay? So I'm going to read it. That's your job, is to describe it as we go. Okay. Not all citizens in Rome were treated equally. In fact, some people living in Rome were not citizens at all. People of Rome were divided into groups. each with different rights and privileges under the law. The smallest and most powerful group were called the patricians. Pause for writing, right? The smallest and the most powerful group were called the patricians. Patricians were Rome's elite, a small group of wealthy, powerful people who owned large homes in the city, vineyards in the country, and villas on the coast. The patricians were citizens of Rome, meaning they had the right to vote. They had certain protections and privileges under the law. And because they were most educated and the privileged group, the patricians were also the ones most likely to become senators. So they got to make a lot of laws in the Roman Republic. As you might guess, the people in the painting are wealthy Roman patricians. In contrast to the ancient Greek culture, women in ancient Rome were considered citizens, and wealthy women were part of the elite patrician group, although they could not vote or serve as a senator or consul. Women didn't have rights for a long time.
Kind of like the army.
Back in the day, yep, for a long time. So make sure that you guys complete box 4, just describing what patricians are. What did we learn about them? Describe it, write it down. Write it. What did you learn about them? Key words that help with that are describing the patricians. There was a lot we learned about them, huh? In our next box, we're going to describe the plebeians. So as we read through about the plebeians, write down any key words that come up to tell us about the plebeians, okay? Plebeians. Notice the contrast in the images. The patricians, the plebeians. Can you make a little prediction about the plebeians?
Yeah.
Another group of Roman citizens were called the plebeians. Plebeians were second-class citizens, meaning that they did not have all the rights and privileges enjoyed by patricians. However, the plebeians had one big advantage: numbers. Because the plebeians made up the largest portion of Roman citizenry, by far, the wealthy patricians learned that they needed to make sure that the plebeians were happy, or at least happy enough that they wouldn't raise up and take over more power for themselves. Like patricians, plebeians were citizens. They could vote. However, they were subject to a different set of laws than patricians. For instance, a patrician could freely insult or even attack a plebeian. But a plebeian would be in big trouble if he did the same to a patrician. Plebeians could own property, but it was hard for them to gain enough land or money to become as rich or as powerful as a patrician. Plebeians came in all shapes and sizes, including fairly wealthy shopkeepers and traders, hardworking farmers and fishermen, and other poor and lowly workers. Farmers were important because plentiful crops were very necessary for the success of Rome's culture and civilization. That is one of the main reasons why Romans worshipped Saturn, the god of the harvest. Make sure you wrote down some key things that help describe a plebeian in image box 5.
So
Everything I just read was about plebeians, which is up here. So everything I just read is going to go into that description of your plebeian.
they can't kill me.
Yep, so you're going to write down key pieces that you heard about plebeians.